The Financial Services Forum put together by Joy Business is taking place at, this morning at the Labadi Beach Hotel on the theme, the Financial Services Cleanup. Now what? Now, some players in the financial sector will deliberate on what is next after the Bank of Ghana completes its cleanup exercise. Some distinguished personalities to lead the discussions will be the Second Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, LC Ado Awaji, Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Reverend Daniel Ugbami Tete, Corporate Governance Consultant and Lawyer Marian Bano, and Dr. Richmond Etuahene, Lecturer at the Ghana Banking College. It's a perfect opportunity to explore the future of banking and finance sector. The Joy Business Financial Services Forum is just on. Let's cross over now to the Labadi Beach Hotel and take a live feed of that event.
Bank of Ghana's Corporate Governance Code, SEC also has one. How do we ensure that there's harmony within the two? Should we go the way of America with the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, where people are punished, actually, for doing the wrong things when it comes to corporate governance? We also have, joining us shortly, will be Reverend Daniel Ugbami. He's the Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission. And also, we have Mr. Osejisi. He's Head Banking Supervision Department at the Bank of Ghana. They've been also highlighted for being complicit in some of these things that went on. So we want to find out today, post all this, we've heard many stories, we've had many discussions, what exactly is going to happen to the financial services sector. And that's exactly what we are going to do here. We also have in front here a panel. I see Nana Osei-Bonsu, Private Enterprise Federation. I see Prince Kofi Amabing, Captain Budu Kumsin. I see more others sitting here. I see Dr. Tony Obin also here. They are going to help us. Dr. Daniel Sedo is also here. Practitioners are here. We are going to delve into this. It's not going to be a talk shop like we know normally. We want to find lasting and sustainable solutions to all the problems. And we are coming to you live from the Labadi Beach Hotel, Omani Hall. We are streaming live also on my Joy Online and on the JoyNews channel. And George, we'll be moderating this session with our panel. I'm going to invite him in here shortly. But we want to make this an interactive session. So as the main panel here discusses the issues, our panel in the front here also will chip in as and when they want to. We don't want to restrict it to only here or there. Let's have this thing interactive. Let's find solutions. At the top of all this, culpability, sustainability, liquidity, and especially sustainability. How do we ensure that post all this, all the reforms, all the workshops we've had, all the training sessions, all the reforms, BOG, SEC, NIC, NPR we have brought out, how do we make sure that they last beyond administrations 5, 10, 15 years? So now I'm going to invite George Rafe up here. He will also introduce our panel again, and then we'll set the ball rolling. Thank you very much. Once again, this is the Joy Business, third edition of the Financial Services Forum, coming to you live from the Labadi Beach Hotel, Omani Hall. George, take it away.
Thank you so much, Philip. Let's show some appreciation for my colleague, Philip Nanfuri. One interesting question that we've been asking ourselves is what next after the cleanup, the closure, the clamp down, and all the downs and the ups? What is next in terms of having a very strong financial industry, a financial industry that we can all go to sleep and wake up and know that indeed my funds are safe? My lecturer once talked about a joke where one bank was trying to go about to do deposit mobilization in the village. So they always try to link the fiscal evidence to their money. So if, for instance, there is a George Rafe bank in Mantima Kebi, they know that my money is in that bank. So this bank went to that village and was mobilizing funds and all the rest. And, the guys in the village was like, wabe face was a call. Because when they see the branch there, they know that, my 1,000 Ghana cedis is with that branch. So if a bank comes there with a van and mobilizes the money and takes it to the city, with Yisikano call. Can it be the same way we can say that Yisikano Waha, we are safe and go to sleep, or be worried about the fact that our money is being taken somewhere? This is why we are having a discussion like this, that after all the cleanup and all those things, what are the things that are being put in place to ensure that you and our funds are safe, and indeed we can go to sleep and say that indeed everything is safe for us? Won't waste my time. I've seen all my distinguished persons here to join us with this discussion, so I will go straight ahead and invite them to join me on this platform. First, I'll call upon the head of banking supervision at the Bank of Ghana, Mr. Osejisi. Ladies and gentlemen, let's show some love and welcome the man from the banking supervision, who is a friend of everyone except the banks. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, let me also welcome the Reverend Daniel Ogbamiteta. He's the Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission up here. Ladies and gentlemen, let's show some love for him. A Reverend, a man of peace, but when it comes to securities, a very tough man. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a corporate governance consultant, Madam Marianne Bano. Let's show some love for her. Young at heart. You can sit here. Yeah. The last one will be a banking consultant, someone who works at the banking college, teaches people how to be astute bankers and appreciate the workings when it comes to banking. He is Dr. Richmond Etuahin. He's a banking consultant. So these are distinguished persons upstage, but this is going to be a very interactive discussion. Whilst they also give their remarks on all the issues, our frontline personalities and distinguished guests here would also join in this discussion, as in talking about the way forward. After all those things that have happened, what would be next? I've seen some very distinguished personalities here. I could talk about Mr. Dansaki, he is MD of EcoBank here. Let's show some love for him as well. He tried to hide at the back, but you know, you can hide when it comes to these programs. I've seen Dr. Sam Mensah, I've seen Prince Kofi Abeng, I've seen the Savings and Loans Association. About a month ago, he was a hot man. This man was running helter-skelter, you know. The Savings and Loans Association, trying to calm everybody's nerves that everything is okay, don't worry, your money is safe. But our money is still safe as of now, or people are still listening about panic withdrawals. And, you know, it's interesting when people won't say that they want to take their money from the bank and ask them, where are they taking their money to? Because it will go, and it will come back. I mean, imagine having about even 1,000 Ghana cedis in the wardrobe, and you always have to come back from work and check. Maybe the houseboy came to clean the room. Maybe the maid servant came to clean the room. Has he taken some 1 Ghana cedi away? So where would you prefer to put your money? After all the concerns that, oh, we won't get our money back and all the rest. The bank has still been established as the safest place with the depositors' insurance and everything to keep your money. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we're setting the ball rolling. So I'll first ask my distinguished persons here to give their preliminary comments about, as you look at what next in terms of the financial services cleanup, going forward, what should we be expect? But again, we'll also want to get some deeper understanding about how we got here. So first, let's do some sharp remarks from our distinguished persons here, just to tell us, going forward, what next, but again, how did we get here? But these are just brief preliminary comments from our distinguished persons here. I'll start from Mr. Osei Jesse, the head of banking supervision at the Bank of Ghana.
Thank you, George. Good morning to everyone, MDs of banks, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and invited guests. Good morning to everyone. Even before I start, let me thank Joy FM for organizing this program. I want to believe that we're going to have a very interactive session and we're going to have a very effective discussions. I bring you greetings from the Governor, Dr. Addison, and his deputies. My supervising governor, my boss, Mrs. Elsie Awazi Adu, would have loved to be here, but for some other engagements, she sends her apologies and best regards and wishes. Let me start by saying that there's no gain saying that the banking sector plays a very important role as far as the financial system is concerned. That is not to say that the other sectors are not important. They are all important. But to the extent that you have a chunk of the financial system assets, a significant proportion of the assets with the banking sector, tells us that it is really an important sector. For some time now, for some years now, we are aware, everybody is aware that we have gone through, the banking sector of this country has gone through some challenges and has really affected everybody. Anytime that the banking sector, not only in this country, suffers, the regulator would have to do something. the question is, you have to do one of three things. You can decide that I will not do anything about the situation. I will just sit down and look unconcerned for the system to eventually crash. That is one of the options available. The second option is that I would want to do something about the situation, but I will do it in the future. I will procrastinate. I will live with the bottlenecks and the implications for some time, and eventually you can be sure that what it means is that we are accumulating losses, and it will have serious implications for the sector in the long run. The third option is that I'm a regulator. I have these challenges. What should I do? I want to bite the bullet. I would want to take some decisions that are unpleasant. I would want to take some decisions that are very difficult. It will create some hardships, though, but I think in the medium to long term, even though the decisions are unpleasant, the system will stabilize and will move on. And I want to believe that the third option is what most regulators would want to pursue. But in making those decisions, I also want to believe that the kind of strategy that you will use, you would want to address the root causes of the challenges that you have. If the challenges that you have, or the situation in which you find yourself, was a result of governance issues, related party issues, and risk management issues, I would want to assume that the right decision is to tackle these decisions or these issues. And it will be wrong for you to say that maybe I'm pursuing the option of bailout. If you do that, or if you do so, what it means is that you'll be fetching water with a basket made out of cane, and you will not make any progress. For us to know exactly where we are coming from, we need to go back. I want to believe that the challenges that we have gone through and we are still going through did not start now. If you look back, as far back 2015, 2016, when we did the asset quality review, the signs were clear. It came out clearly that about 9 banks had serious challenges. And maybe that was the time you should have pursued some of the action we have taken now. But what we did was to place these banks on what we call the prompt corrective action. What the regulator did was to engage these banks to find out how best they can correct the situation. They were asked to submit capital plans. We work with the banks. But unfortunately, the causes of the situation in which we found those banks was not as a result of capital, even though capital had eroded. What had caused the capital situation of the banks to erode was purely related party transactions, in the sense that even though the shareholders of these banks had brought in capital, they have found a way of taking out the capital. Not just their capital, they had taken out the capital and had also taken out depositors' funds, and they had also taken out loans that they had contracted. And at the end of the day, if you take out your capital and you take out depositors' funds, are you getting it? And you take out the loans you have contracted, and these loans, capital and deposited funds, were taken out by means of loans granted to themselves. What it means that they took out the funds that had come in by means of granting loans to themselves, to shareholders, to related parties, to directors, and so on and so forth. So much as we try to engage these banks for them to rectify the situation, we yielded very little results. At the end of the day, some of the banks submitted plans which they were able to implement, and they came out of the woods. But majority of the banks could not turn the situation around. And you and I know what happened, just as George said, in 2017. As a result of that, the regulator had to revoke the licenses of 2 banks. And let me put on record that the regulator did not collapse these banks. I want to say that the directors and the shareholders of these 2 banks collapsed the banks. All the regulator did was that, hand over my license to me. You see, when a bank finds itself in such a situation and the regulator delays in taking action, the implication is that the bank will be accumulating more losses and liabilities for the taxpayer, because what it means is that the bank will continue to mobilize deposits. And it is the deposits that are being mobilized that will be used to pay salaries, will be used to pay fuel, overheads, and all those things, because the bank is not making any profit. So the Bank of Ghana, the regulator, had no choice than to step in to say that enough is enough. I'm taking my license for the 2 banks. The same thing happened in connection with the 5 banks that were consolidated. Related party transactions, risk management issues, monies that were taken out of the banks. And at the end of the day, the shareholders, the directors, and key management staff collapsed these banks, some of the banks. And Bank of Ghana had no choice than to say that I'm stepping in, I'm revoking the license, I'm doing purchase and assumption, a new bank, a bridge bank is being created, and some assets and liabilities will be given on to this bank. Fortunately for us, in the case of UT and Capital, because the Bank of Ghana wanted to ensure that there was financial stability and to protect the interests of depositors, you know what happened? The Bank of Ghana had to do a P&A with Commercial Bank, and some assets and liabilities were taken to Ghana Commercial Bank. In that sense, depositors' funds were safe, were able to cut down the job losses that would have resulted, and we had financial stability. And the same thing applies to the decision that Bank of Ghana took in connection with the 5 banks. A bridge bank was formed, and some assets and liabilities were passed on to these banks. For some of the banks, it wasn't so much of accumulated losses and bad loans, but you and I know that before you be given a license, you need to go through due process to acquire the license. We found out that some of them had gotten those licenses without going through the appropriate channel and laid down procedures, so their licenses had to be revoked. So that is where we are now. Unfortunately, the savings and loans and the microfinance institutions, the finance houses, had learned from their senior brothers. The methodology that their senior brothers were using, they had learned it very well. So they also went through the same route and took monies out of these banks by means of related party transactions. And at the end of the day, depositors were crying for their funds. The funds were not there because shareholders, directors are taking monies out of these banks. So these are the factors that led to the situation in which we find ourselves.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sejisi. A round of applause for him. I think I gave him much time because he's setting the pace for a very interesting debate, because some of the institutions that were affected are even here. Let's see what they also have to say with respect to the issue on the ground, on what the regulator is saying and what was the issue on the ground. I'll go to Dr. Tuaheni also to come in as well with us of a brief comment, and I'll give the regulators enough time because they will set the pace for us to have a discussion here. So forgive me if I've given him enough time for him to talk and set the records for us to have an interesting debate here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, George. I think if anyone wants to see the genesis of the problem, I think you can refer to the IMF's Financial Stability Assessment of 2011, the 2011/11-131. It sums up all what has happened today. It talks about the macroeconomic instability, high inflation, borrowing. It talks about currency depreciation. Those of you who want to find out, between 2009, the cedi was being quoted 1.43. By the close of 2018, it was about 487. Look at the huge depreciation. That is the microeconomic instability that facilitated this. Some of the factors are exogenous and some are endogenous. Now we have to cut the short. He said we should do it short. We have another area that has also caused this. The mother of all corporate governance failure. If you look at the corporate governance failure in Ghana, I think it's quite astronomical. People appointed to board without proper fit test. They didn't comply with the Basel Committee for Banking Supervision 2006 and 13, where there's 3 says that there must be proper fit test for both shareholders, directors, and senior managers. That is the bit of it. Then we come to the regulatory infractions. This document in front of me here talks about all the things that have happened in this country. And he said, the examination done by IMF, people will be surprised that lenders of last resort in 2011, 2010, IMF raised an objection that banks cannot enjoy liquidity support when they are insolvent. Regulatory forbearances is all in this document. Poor licensing regime was there. Institution being upgraded from savings and to universal banking without proper corporate governance and supervisory structures is there. So many things in it. Now let us come to some of the factors that has come in. You look at accumulation of non-payment of contractors and service provided. The IMF in 2011 stated categorically, and that has brought us where we are. So ladies and gentlemen, for me, my worry is not about who caused it. Why do people pay to supervise over bad practices? People paid by the state who are supposed to help us to do the right thing. None of today. You go to the radio station, suddenly some of them have turned into professors in banking crisis. And I can't believe it. So let this country get it right that when a report, auditors will tell you, when the auditors come to the bank and they give us management report, Mr. Kofi Amwabeng is here, he will tell you what we do. They will tell us that the committee, the audit subcommittee, would assemble us and then assign responsibility to address. Who did Bank of Ghana assign? So Bank of Ghana itself has corporate governance, central bank governance failure, including the Minister of Finance. This document was issued to the Minister of Finance and the Bank of Ghana. They turned a blind eye. And that is what we see today. So ladies and gentlemen, let us be more proactive. People are paid to work. And the laws are so good that people get away with everything. And then at the end of it all, they try to blame people who are doing the right thing. That is my summary for what has happened. And we'll talk about the way forward so that we are very proactive, law-abiding citizens, honesty and integrity, forthrightness. Other than that, we can do all these enforcement, fit and proper tests, but at the end of it all, we'll come back to square one. Thank you very much.
Dr. Twaini, thank you so much for your submissions. Let me go back to another regulator, capital securities industry, Reverend Daniel Ogbamitete. Your opening remarks.
Thank you, George. I think what I'll just add to the two previous speakers in terms of how we got to where we are is the fact that we have a financial sector that there's a lot of interconnectedness. So you find that when a problem comes up in this area, it easily seeps across. And associated with that is the emergence of what we can term financial conglomerates within the sector. So one entity has a leg in this space, maybe an ABOG and an SEC and so on and so forth, and then taking advantage of regulatory arbitrage. And against the backdrop that there could have been better coordination or sharing of information among the regulators, because I think that didn't really go well in the past. And I think that we are looking at how to forge a greater cooperation, sharing of information. So, because if we take, let's say, the fund managers that I license, you find that they would have been doing deals or placing money with Bank of Ghana regulated institution. So once there's a problem, let's say a bank going down or a savings and loans going down, and a fund manager has exposure there, it has that kind of effect. So the interconnectedness, the emergence of financial conglomerates, and then the fact that the regulators could have done better in terms of coordination, sharing of information, I would put that as contributory factors in addition to the previous one stated why we are where we are. But I think that we can look forward to ensuring that all the different actors play their part in ensuring that we avoid a recurrence of such a massive cleanup. I believe that there would always be issues, but I think that if there's commitments across board, we should see a better, more robust, stronger financial sector. And I think it's in our own interest because of the critical role that the financial sector plays in any economy.
I'll bring in Madam Marian Barno. She's a lawyer and a corporate governance expert.
Thank you very much, Joy, for this opportunity, and good morning to you all. I just want to make a fundamental observation. It says the cleanup. Now what? Is the assumption that the cleanup is over? The cleanup can never be over. That is my view. When you go to a dentist and you clean your teeth and they are sparkling white, subsequent to that, you put the candy in your mouth. You put the caffeine in your mouth. You do all kinds of things. So you have to go back for another cleanup. So I think that we have to discuss this in the right context, that cleanup is continuous. And if we don't do it in a continuous way, and you do it in such a drastic manner, we'll have the effects that we are having now. So I think that let's be reminded that cleanup is continuous. And it's even more so because of a point I read somewhere where I want to share with you that something to the effect that the minds of men and women, very inventive and ingenious in crafting schemes for self-interest. So it will happen again. Because the human mind, greed, selfishness, coupled with either incompetence or indifference in the boardroom, will make it happen again. That is why we need the right structures in terms of corporate governance, which will act as a barrier to all the things that we've witnessed. Exacting accountability, exacting transparency, making sure that the directors are working efficiently, making sure that there's no longer any forbearance. Let us have the mindset that there will be continuous cleansing. These are my preliminary remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Marian Barno. She has to do with corporate governance, and she's always careful about that one. Let's show some round of applause. Let's show some appreciation for our distinguished personalities here in their opening remarks to us this morning. I'll do another round of questions with them, just one round, and I'll come back to our distinguished personalities here who are gathered here. I've seen very, very, very important persons here, and you're all welcome to this program. So I'll come back again to Madam Marian Barno about corporate governance. And you talked about the reoccurrence thing again, and in the US, there's talk about another financial crisis again coming back. And the experts have predicted it happens, it's a cycle, it happens every year. There's an interesting analogy being placed with democracy and whether Africans, and sorry for my words, we are ready for democracy. Some kind of argument is also being made for corporate governance, that could there be a special case made for us when it comes to corporate governance? So listen, there's no room for excuse. You have to stick by this thing. Madam.
Yeah, I mean, it's been proven. There's empirical evidence about the case to be made for corporate governance. Let me say that the rules have not changed and will not change. The point is the weak implementation of corporate governance practice. Because corporate governance is about accountability. It's making sure that there's transparency. It's making sure that the proper controls are in place. And more importantly, like Dr. Atuahini said, if you look at the architecture of the governance structure, okay, in any financial institution, we're talking about the shareholders, the role of the shareholders. We're talking about the shareholders. We are talking about the directors. We are talking about management. We are talking about the internal auditor and the external auditor. We are talking about the company secretary, and we are talking about the regulator. Now, if you look at this structure, the most important pillar is the board of directors, because the shareholder sometimes is the culprit. The shareholder has self-interest, but it is the board of directors who hold the balance. But then the question is, how strong are they? How strong is the board? That is why corporate governance today is talking about independence in the boardroom. Independent-minded people who are strong enough and are able to check the shareholder who owns the business. Because sometimes the shareholder forgets that even though he set up the business and even though he put the capital in the business, there are other stakeholders, as we can see today. The employees who are suffering, the suppliers who are suffering. They didn't put capital in the business, but they are stakeholders. So you cannot say that because I put in capital into the business and the business belongs to me, I can do whatever I want. No, you cannot. There are stakeholders and there are rules and regulations. So it is important that we look critically at the board of directors. Who goes into the boardroom as a director? It is good that you have men of integrity, but the question is, what is the use of having men of integrity in the boardroom when they don't have the courage? It's of no consequence. You want to be Mr. Nice. You want to be Madam Nice in the boardroom, and you say, I'm a person of integrity, so you don't have to speak out. We don't need those people. We need people who have the courage to speak the truth. People who have the courage to make sure that the right thing is done, that there is compliance, that they are controlled. But more importantly, people who understand the business of banking. I was listening to Dr. Sedo, and okay, today the auditors are opening our eyes. They are saying that well, it's not today, it's always been the principle that, the directors are responsible for the financial statements. As for us, the auditors will only come and pass judgment. So why did the shareholder appoint you as auditors? Auditors are appointed by the shareholder to support their interests, to take care of their interests. So I don't think it is enough for auditors to say that, the directors have hidden the things. Find out, that's why you are there. That is why where there are red flags, you should follow the trail of the red flags. But as a director also in the boardroom, if directors are being told that they're responsible for the financial statement, we have to make sure that there's financial literacy in the boardroom. We are not turning everybody into an accountant, but if you are in the boardroom of a financial institution, you should be able to interpret and ask the questions. Should I go on? Let me break for now. But the point,
Yes.
let me go and say that it is important. Corporate governance is still the pillar on which our financial systems should be grounded.
Thank you so much, Madam Marian Bano. Let me come to the regulator, Mr. Sejesi. She made a critical point about whether the cleanup can ever be completed. At BOG, what are you doing to assure us that we can go and sleep? And just like the prediction in US, we shouldn't expect another crisis in the next 5 years. When you are over, when you go home for retirement, another person will come and say that Mr. Sejesi gave a license to a bank that doesn't deserve to get a license.
Thank you very much, George. I think Madam Bano has made very good observations, and she's expressed some sentiments. It's been indicated by the regulator that the cleanup is over. Yes, and we really meant the cleanup was over.
Your constituents share a different view on that?
But the reforms are not over. The cleanup is over, but the reforms are not over. Yes, and what it means is that, yeah, I know. What it means is that if a bank falls foul of the law, if the rules, the regulations, and the legal framework are not complied with, what the regulator would have to do as far as the law is concerned, I think we will apply the law. If a bank, we find out that, just as Madam indicated, we have come out with the Corporate Governance Directive, and we expect the banks to comply with the directive. All the areas, right from the board, shareholders, internal audits, the component, sorry, the how the board should be constituted, people with diverse backgrounds, and all. We expect that the banks will comply with all these directives. And to add to this, we have also issued the Fit and Proper Persons Directive. Who qualifies, who can be issued with a banking license as a shareholder, who we can describe as fit and proper as far as directorship is concerned, key management staff. We have spelled out these things in the Fit and Proper Persons Directive. And it is expected that the banks will comply. So even though we've come out to say that the cleanup is over, that doesn't mean that we're going to relax and will not enforce the laws. Madam made mention of the fact that we can have dominant shareholders who sometimes will want to control the directors of the bank. You see, the directors have been made aware by means of the Corporate Governance Directive that they have a fiduciary responsibility, and they must take decisions that are the best interests of the bank, especially for the shareholders. If you put 400 million in a bank, and your total asset, the balance sheet size is about 3 billion. You just have 400 million. And you might even have used the part of the 400 million to acquire fixed assets, IT, platforms, and all those things. What we are using to run the business, the resources, the cash, the investment, the loan, everything, they've been created out of depositors' funds. So at the end of the day, you must know that your stake in the business is very small. And you don't look at the cash sitting in your vault and say that I have so much profit, so I'm sharing profit, I'm taking money here and there. You don't have anything. What you are entitled to is profit, and by way of dividends. And this directors must know. Going forward, you ask, what are we doing to ensure that tomorrow when I leave the bank, nobody will call me, maybe to you, Oku, and say that, Mr. CGC, you issued a license to somebody, and you shouldn't have issued that license. I can tell you that the necessary structures have been put in place, and people have been made aware that they will be accountable for their actions. We have put in place clearly defined framework for licensing of banks, capital verification, all the procedures are clearly spelled out. And we want to ensure that we enforce them. We have various control levels, people who initiate their transactions, and another person would have to check. And before we issue with the license, we'll make sure that we have ticked all the boxes. And the licenses are not issued just in BSD. We have to make sure that the necessary approvals are given. And whoever is giving the approval will also ask the relevant questions, because the person knows the risk associated with issuing licenses to institutions that do not qualify. The appropriate structures have been put in place. And let me tell you that, in a way, everybody in banking supervision has a performance contract. If you are a relationship manager and you are in charge of some savings and loans, finance houses and banks, you have a performance contract. And at the end of the day, you will be accounted, you will have to account for it. As a head of department, in a way, I have a performance contract. And I want to believe that my superiors also have performance contract. So everybody knows the kind of wind that is blowing. And we have come to the conclusion that what happened in the past should not be carried into the future.
Thank you, Mr. CGC, for that interesting. I'll come to you, Dr. Twangene. I mean, you lecture, you engage a lot of the bankers and all the rest. And are you assured about the never again, or just like, I mean, if I hope I got the right, fence up, it started with the state banks, Bank for Housing and Construction, the corporate credit unions, it will come back again. It's a human thing.
Well, thank you, George. The two pillars on these crises are the regulatory governance and the corporate governance. as the regulator set out with various directives, especially one like fit and proper test, the financial holding guidelines, enforcing the consolidated supervision, which was lacking, as the IMF report in 2011 said, cross-border supervision. Previously, there were no guidelines. And I would have thought the people at Helm Affairs of that time would have seen that they needed it. Even IFRS, the implementation is not supposed to be up 2018. Let me tell you, it was 2009. I remember I had to attend a program delivered for one of the top accountants. I've forgotten his name. 2008, I have to go and understudy the impairment, how it was impaired. But you see how Ghanaians have shifted the goalpost. We shifted it from there. We're talking about 2018. So my only worry is about enforcement and compliance. The whole issue that we have at stake at the moment is poor enforcement and lack of compliance. If you look at the first, the Banking Act 674, 2004, all these things were there. Corporate governance was there. The BSDI, the 2016, is only elaborating it. The laws were very good. And I think in this country, what is killing us, and will continue to kill us, until we begin to talk about enforcement, compliance, and sanctions. You see, the sanctions that we sanction them to penal point. I mean, I remember HSBC, when they flooded the AML rules in America. Sorry to say, they were fined over $600 million. The Federal Reserve say that, pay or get out. And they have to pay. But if you're charging people peanuts and they are making good money, they will flout it and pay. So apart from that, Bank of Ghana has issued fantastic things. If I want to read to you too many of them, if they will stick to it and ensure everybody is complying, then they never again, even if you come there, it will not be as huge as the 20. Now they are quoting $3 billion to $4 billion. That's what the Minister of Finance said.
Yeah, about 14 billion projected, about 20 billion.
A lot of money. When your capex, the capital expenditure for the whole nation for 2 years is not up to that. The capital expenditure of the whole nation budget is not up to that. If few people would do these malfeasances, financial malfeasances, and then we will sit down and clap and sing hallelujah for people. That is where I have, because compliance is negative, nil. So, Mr. Sejersey, once you ensure compliance and enforcement, they never again, it's only God that determines these things. It will come, but we'll be able to mitigate it. Because 21 billion could have built a dual carriage road from Accra to Tamale or to Sefiri or so, Akontomra, where the cocoa, majority of the cocoa is coming from. We need to be very careful about what we are saying so that it doesn't set a bad precedent. I charge you Central Bank, that go and tell your big bond that posterity will judge them. Not the laws coming, no regulation, enforcement and compliance.
Can I make a quick intervention, please? Yeah, it's been never again, never again. We don't want this what we've gone through to happen again. But you see, wherever you go, banking supervision has an objective. And we will do our work in such a way that we will mitigate the risk of bank failures. But we must put on record and we must say that the existence of effective banking supervision does not guarantee that there will not be a bank failure. That is something that we have to put on record. From where we are and from where we sit, as much as possible, we would want to enforce the laws. We would want to ensure that we do our work in a way that will mitigate the risk of bank failure, but we are not giving an assurance that even when we have done our best, there will not be bank failure. That's, I think, we have to get it right.
Interesting submission. I mean,
yes, interesting submission because
the fact that I won't come back from Societies here again.
The interesting submission because I keep saying this. You go to Konfanochi, you go to Kolebu, you go to all the places. You have very good surgeons, you have very good doctors. They are all over. But at the end of the day, people die.
Interesting. Reverend Ogwami Tete, there's talk about the financial sector cleanup not being over. In your space, in the connection and all the rest. Are we assured that everything is safe for work in progress, or our cleanup would also happen?
Well, for me, I would say that at the core of the challenges we are having is bad behavior, whether it's at the regulator level or the market operator level or the client. And so my question is, can bad behavior ever stop? If I wear my other cap as a preacher, I would say that the reason why we continue to preach is because there's always bad behavior. So in effect, I don't think that we can say that we will never do another cleanup. Probably is the scale of the cleanup, because what has happened, I guess, is quite significant. And I believe that going forward, as regulators, we need to keep our eye on the ball and keep doing what we have to do. From where I sit, I agree that corporate governance is a challenge, but we have come up with a corporate governance code for listed companies. We've also come up with conduct of business guidelines for our market operators. And these guidelines specify things to do with composition of the board, the independence of the board, the fact that it's not just about having non-executive directors on the board, but they must be independent, non-executive directors. We are looking at the fit and proper test. We are looking at some continuous training program for directors to be sure that corporate governance, best practice is applied within our market operators. And we are also putting in place measures to strengthen enforcement, because enforcement is always a challenge. No matter the resources you have as a regulator, you realize that you still need to put in some more effort in the area of enforcement, because human behavior, for what it is, would want to find ways around. So I believe that on a continuing basis, as regulators, we'll continue to keep our eye on the ball and deal with issues as they come up, rather than kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point about bad behavior and say that when you're talking about enforcement and all that, there has to be an incentive for good behavior, and the incentive is the sanctions. It is a sanction. I think that the regulator has, in this context and in today's environment, the regulator has to be ferocious. If you have assets in your house and you are protecting those assets, you don't put a pet dog in your house. You bring a ferocious dog to protect your assets. So the regulator has to be very aggressive and ferocious, and that will be an incentive for good behavior.
We want to thank you so much.
If I can just come in, talking about being ferocious, and I think Dr. Etiahene also mentioned how some company was fined about $600 million. A regulator, you have to work within your enabling act. If I take my enabling act, for instance, you find that the penalty unit I can apply, depending on the sanctions, maybe the highest would be about 4,500 penalty units. That's 12, penalty unit is 12 cities. And that's what the act gives. So somebody can actually give you the money up front and then go ahead and then commit it. But my hands are tied, because that is the enabling legislation. Okay, so we are talking about how can we make it more punitive, because the incentive must be there. But if it's not punitive, it won't.
Thank you so much. I'll come back to the head of bank supervision, because I want some deeper understanding of this whole liquidity support issue, and it's become one of the biggest debates today about giving banks money and they intend to do other things with it and all the rest. But listen, we want to make this discussion more interactive than ever before. And that is why we have certain critical stakeholders here. I want to look at whether we can do the first 10 minutes to do some critical stakeholders here. I've seen Al Hassan, and then he's head the Association of Bankers. Just a quick thought from you about what next, and as a bank, and what are the thoughts of your concerns or the concerns from your players with respect to whether we are there in ensuring that we are opening a new page. And again, as I said, even though let's talk about force majeure, never again, and all the rest, are we moving forward a new page, or still the bad nuts are in that we need to do it?
Regulator is here and he has spoken. You have to be very careful. But, you know, I think we shouldn't wish bad things for ourselves. And I like to put this in context, that in all of the issues that came up in the industry, not a single systemic bank went down. All the top 10 or top 12 banks that control 90% of the depositors' funds, loans and advances, and financial services, not a single one went down. So when you start talking crisis, you are wishing bad things for yourselves. There was not a single stoppage in the delivery of financial services in Ghana. Never. The banks that were impacted controlled less than 10% of the loans and advances in this country. Financial services were never halted for an hour. Everybody who wanted financial services, whether local or domestic, international or domestic, had banking services. So your systemic banks were well catered for. I think what we have in Ghana is a credibility crisis which we are elevating to banking crisis. If you use the credibility lens on any industry in this country, you're going to have the crisis that you see. Because back to the point that Dr. Etuahine made, I mean, this report was made public. And if Dr. Seto is here, Dr. Seto presented the asset quality review to all of us. And you didn't have, back to clean up, you didn't have to wait for a Bank of Ghana to come and clean you up. The institution I run, we started applying IFRS 9 in 2009. If you go back to the banking ADR, the asset quality review, the findings out of the banking, asset quality review, for those of you who don't know, is how ESLA was born. Because the systemic banks who were told that the non-payment by government would impact systemic banks got together and said, which are these systemic entities that we are all exposed to, that if government doesn't pay them, will result in a systemic bank going down. And that's how ESLA was created, to take out the energy sector debts and the petroleum sector debts. Those two could really have brought down systemic banks, and you would truly have had banking crisis. So cleanup is not really the function of the Bank of Ghana. It's like your traffic lights. The traffic light doesn't make a good driver. So it's the banks that are consistently supposed to clean up. And why I say it's a credibility crisis is that just look at, we have to be we should call a spade a spade. Most of the things that happened, Mr. Osei just said, you know, you take out your capital, you take out depositors' funds, you take out loans. That's not banking in any book. That's not banking in any book whatsoever. So it was never intended to be banks, and people did what they did. And again, nice Ghanaians, you condoned it. And then when it comes up, we call it banking crisis. It wasn't banking crisis, because banking is all promises. When you leave your money with the bank makes a promise to pay it back to you. When the bank gives a loan, the borrower makes a promise to pay it back. It takes diligence on both the bank and the client to sort these things out. And therefore, some of the things that they talk about board of directors, I can't imagine some of the things that happened. And I've been a journeyman in the banking sector. You know, I've seen boards at Stanchart, I've seen boards at Barclays, I've seen boards at SSB. It's not possible. It's absolutely not possible. There isn't any board director who would sit and see a kind of report like that and go home and just whistle away. No. It was never intended to be banks, and people did what they did. And therefore, if the regulator says we will not allow that to happen again, then hooray. But please do not say that those things that happened that impacted these institutions were banking transactions. They were not.
Alassane Andania, thank you so much. As president of the Ghana Association of Bankers, let me do another critical stakeholder. I'll be coming to them. We're going to make sure this is very interactive. But let me get to Nano Sebunsu. He's the Private Enterprise Federation, about the concerns of private businesses. And as we give the assurance that as a cleanup over and what next, for you, private businesses, I look at the Bank of Ghana data, non-performing loans, and they are still rising if it had not been the write-off. You're struggling to get loans at a very competitive rate. What are the concerns of private businesses?
George, thank you. I'm surprised by the pronouncement by Mr. Osei that it's over. People's monies are locked up. Businesses don't have liquidity. Businesses cannot operate. So what are you talking about? That is over. My money should stay in the banking system forever? Or what do we do? Bank of Ghana has a responsibility, the same with SEC. People did not go play susu. They put their money in certified, licensed, legitimate institutions. Because of what had happened, and I don't want to go that route yet, their monies, they cannot get their money to operate their business. So when you tell me it's over, do we get our money tomorrow or we get it the next day? What is over? Bank of Ghana and SEC going to make arrangements for people to be paid? When SEC came out with a directive, May 2018, announcing some institutions that were having problems, we assumed the SEC could have sanctioned, suspend them, and possibly even go to court. Nothing happened. They still took monies from the people, from businesses. When an asset manager takes money from depositors and lock it up in the savings and loans instead of investing in private businesses. And then when the savings and loans go down, they say, well, we can't have our money because there's a run in the institution. For every fund manager, what you do is you know the kind of long-term investment, and you know the kind of demands that will come from your depositors periodically. So you set aside about 15 to 20% of your liquidity in maybe treasuries and something that you can liquidate immediately when there's a demand. But you don't go put 100% of your deposit in a savings and loans, in a micro institution, or in a financial institution. So when they fail, there's a ripple effect. It affects you. What I want to know from Mr. Osei and the Reverend, Mr. Jesse, how long have you been the banking supervisory unit head? Because what Mr. Tuahine said, I don't know if you guys have read that document since it was been out 2011. If you had, since you became the supervisor, you would have seen a whole kind of worms. In Ghana, banking supervision is waiting for reports from the institutions. Do we have an annual on-site visit? Do we have bank examiners going in there when your asset non-performing loan portfolio is about 10% or even 5%? So you go and visit the bank, the management, what's going on? Do we do that? No. I have a gentleman sitting next to me whose father is Dr. Indom, GN Bank. He said they visited on-site supervision 2015. The next one, 2017. Wait a minute, nowhere. I'm a former bank examiner of New York State Banking Department. We do not allow that. Anytime your non-performing loan goes more than 1.5, go to the banking department and check. There's a visit. They invite management to come on board. What is going on? We don't wait till the last minute. 80 to 90% non-performing loan portfolio. When we hosted the president-elect, December 21st, 2016, I brought this up, and that was my member of the board, that there are a lot of non-performing assets in the banking system. The government should make a decision and take off those non-performing assets, give it to a recovery company, and make the banks clean. Did we take that? We knew at that time. We've known for more than 4 years, and based upon this report, So as a supervisor, and that's why I asked, how long have you been supervisor? And how long have you been the Director General? Have you had access to that report? What pillars did you put in place before Bank of Ghana came in? I've been talking to you guys over the period, telling them what is happening. Asset managers who are issuing that checks, bouncing all the way, not paying people. So when you say it's over, sir, I beg to differ, because my clients, the private sector, don't have access to their money to continue their business.
Nana Sebonsi, thank you so much. Let me come back to the audience for those critical questions that have been raised. I'll get a response from Reverend Nugwamitete and also Mr. Sejusi. Quick response to the concerns raised by private sector, not an individual business person.
Thank you very much, Nana. I appreciate where you're coming from. I have been in BSD for almost about 2 years now, as the head of department. That is not to say that I'm not concerned about what happened in the past. I think I'm very much concerned. I'm very much concerned about what happened in the past. Let me also say that you raised the issue of our visits to the banks. I don't want to personalize issues. I know Kweku, he's been a very good friend of mine, and I have met him more than 30 times. And I don't want to go there. But let me say that if you look at the previous act, before Act 930, it's required that banking supervision should visit the bank at least once in a year, a provision of the previous act. But if you look at Act 930, that provision has been taken out because of best practice. The methodology should be race-based. I know Stanbic Bank, I know EcoBank, I know SG, I know Barclays, I know Stanchart. I'm very much conversant with their risk profiles. So on the basis of the risk profiles and my assessment of the risk of these institutions, I can decide to go there maybe once every 2 years. Because I know how these banks are being managed. So if I did not visit, let's say, Stanbic, EcoBank, and other banks every year, I know why I have taken that decision. But for some other banks, which I would not want to mention, I will decide to go there maybe every 6 months. And also, I will also ensure that my off-site surveillance system is working effectively as far as these banks are concerned. We pick the signals through the off-site surveillance system. I can tell you the number of times my office met the institutions whose licenses have been revoked. The number of times I met the shareholders, the number of times I met the directors, the number of times I met key management staff on a regular basis. So this is to say that I know where you're coming from, Nana, but the system you are running is such that you concentrate your resources, you deploy your resources in the areas that you think that are very risky as a supervisor. And that is what we do, Nana.
Thank you. Round of applause for Nana.
When reports have indicated a chunk of loans were put outside the system of reports coming to you, and you know, I'm not going to mention names. So when you look at risk profile, that does not include non-reporting assets or loans of about 3-point-something billion. So how are you assessing the risk when you don't even know the existence of this exposure? This is where my problem is. If you don't go to the site, because when we go to the site, we seize the IT system. That records every transaction, every activity of the institution. So things that are not being reported to you, we can identify. So your risk exposure may be based upon reports to you. But what about non-reporting activities? Thank you.
Nana, what I said was that we have the kind of methodology we're using and the kind of system we're using. It's a combination of the off-site system and the on-site system. the one complements the other, and especially the off-site system feeds into the on-site system. So it's not like you sit in office and just receive returns and review the returns, and that's all. You need to go on site to find out what is happening. And what I'm saying is that the frequency of your visits to a bank is influenced by the kind of risk profile that the bank has. And it will interest you to know that as part of the restructuring that is going on in the supervision department, we have had to look at our IT systems again so that we can directly interrogate the system that the banks are running and verify the kind of reports that they send to us by means of the off-site system. So all the issues that have happened in the industry have informed us on the decision as far as the way forward is concerned. Madam Barnum mentioned that depending on the kind of risk that you expect to happen in your house, that will inform you the kind of dog that you should put in place. Yes, and we have looked at our system, we have looked at the culture, we have looked at the IT system, we've looked at staff requirements, we've looked at our training requirements, and a host of others. And we are ensuring that we beef up all these things to ensure that we are on top of the work that we do.
Thank you, Mr. Sejes. Reverend, there was a question again from the Private Enterprise Federation about people struggling still to get their funds.
Okay, I think on that, maybe I'll comment on that later, but I just want to address the fact that we are also driven by the risk-based framework for supervision. So we are selective in the kind of on-site inspections that we do, but we both have the on-site and then the off-site. And you know, we take actions like we suspend and we publish it. Sometimes we don't publish all the actions. For instance, we have in recent times directed some of the fund managers to stop taking new money. We weighed, you know, publishing it based on the general, you know, fragile nature of the industry. But we asked them to put up notices in their offices, and we did follow-up checks to do that. So it's not everything that we do that we publish, but we do take the actions that are within our remit to do. But regards the issue of people not getting their monies, it ranges from the kind of product that the fund manager sold. I can say that some of the fund managers have sold products they shouldn't have sold, effectively guaranteeing returns. Because really, when you talk about investment, it's not a promise. You know, Ms. Andani talked about the fact that if you take your money to a bank, you are promised to get your money. Investment is different. You are taking some risk. So depending on your risk tolerance, and then your acceptance of the kind of return risk profile that will be offered to you, when the outcome comes, it can go this way or that way. But we've had a situation, and that's an issue that we are looking at dealing with where some fund managers have sold guaranteed returns, and then because of counterparty default, they now also have a difficulty in paying back client money. We are looking at all options of resolving it. I am not in a position to give details at this time, but we are looking at the various ways in which to you know, help the confidence of investors to be restored.
A minute, yeah. Quick comment, yeah.
Just a minute. I think we shouldn't also forget the role of the state as an actor, and not limited to only the regulator, because I heard Reverend Obami Tete talk about the constraints in respect of sanctions. And in America, when they had the crisis, you know, Congress responded with the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. So I think that the state should also respond with new legislation to support the reform drives.
Thank you so much. Let me get back again to the audience. Let me see whether I can use the next 10 minutes to still take the critical stakeholders who are and the VIPs who are here, and then we'll go to the audience as well to take the questions and all the rest. I want us to be as brief as possible so that we can have a very interactive discussion here. Mr. Mabe, over to you. Heard all the things they've been talking about.
I knew you'd be calling me, so. Well, I think first and foremost, Joy FM, this is a great opportunity. I respect all the contributions that have come across. So it's sort of exhausted most of the points that I had. I think we've put emphasis on corporate governance, regulators' role, and so on and so forth. But I think what we are missing is the Africans' attitude to governance. Now, the reason why I'm saying this, and I'm saying this from the perspective of UT Bank, because that is what I used to run. And I'll be quite blunt about it, but I'll choose my words carefully. When you build a local institution which has been acknowledged for so long and so on and so forth, and we've grown from, let's say we started with a staff of 3, and at our best we had a staff 2,000, about 2,500. You expect, as was done in the US and other places, that the government will try to keep its own and not just treat it anyhow. So to Mr. Amdane's point about systemic banks, mostly foreign banks. So what are we going to do in terms of creating local banks? That's the question that I'll leave. But to come to my point about the Africans' attitude towards governance, and I'll be straight about it, as I said. In UT's case, about a month to UT's closure, we had a meeting with the Bank of Ghana. And we were promised that with that, the investor we brought, within a few weeks, we're going to evaluate it and then get back to us so we have an EGM to inform our shareholders. And we're a listed company. Now, 1 week to the 14th of August, when UT was surrogated, a letter was written by Bank of Ghana to our investor that they didn't like the investment. We were not even copied, but that investor was our investor. Then you look at the way UT was arrogated. It didn't need policemen at dawn 6 a.m. as if it's a rolling school. And then GCB staff and the press at 6 a.m. to close a bank, and then go and destroy the signages as if it's some satanic shrine. Now, why I'm saying that is that is not how banks are closed down, and there must be a process. And I love it. I mean, I'm not saying UT should have been kept at all cost. If UT wasn't doing well, and the government decides that for whatever reason it will close it down as the process requires. Now we have issues where other banks were closed down under different circumstances. Then you don't know, depending on who is giving the instructions. And I tell you, the governor that I met, that is Dr. Addison, is a decent gentleman, and he has merit. I'm sure he's a good governor. So how come he can act anyhow? In other words, the political parties that we have, and it's everywhere in Africa, they interfere with the appointment of the people. Either they will appoint somebody who hasn't got the merit, or you appoint somebody who has a merit but who pull the strings. So this cleanup, which is not complete, as my friend here said, is going to come back again because the powers that be will go around proper corporate governance and regulators, because they put them there and they will still pull the strings. So for Ghana, we have a problem, and in the whole of Africa, we have a problem. Because I don't know who is instructing people to act differently on different occasions. I will just buttress the point with the increased minimum capital of 400. Some banks were left giving some time to find the 400. Some banks merged, they didn't have it, but wait, the government says go. Some banks, for strategic reasons, they shouldn't touch them. some banks, government will raise money to back them up to make the 400. Who does that? What kind of economy are we running? It's so subjective, so haphazard. If we don't get our leaders, and I don't know how, to actually respect the people and respect systems and institutions, this crisis will come back again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prince Kofi Amabeng, for those interesting and blunt comments there. This is the Joy Business Financial Services Forum. It's coming to you live from the Labadi Beach Hotel, and we're looking at the financial services cleanup. So what? That are we assured that everything is over, or again, the cat will come back again to bite us or scratch us? Let me just take time to acknowledge some of our distinguished personalities who have joined us here for the forum. We have the Managing Director of EcoBank, Mr. Dansaki. We have Mr. Lahasan Andani, his MD, Stanbic Bank, and also the President of the Ghana Association of Bankers. We have Dr. Nana Kweku Indum. He is the Vice President of Group Indum. We have Dr. Daniel Sedo. He is a financial consultant. And also we have Kwame Jantua, CEO of Africa Energy Consortium. I'll still go ahead and do the acknowledgement of those distinguished persons who have joined us here. So on the critical stakeholders, I'll do that. And if it's a question, straightforward or contribution, let's be as brief as possible. Tinubu Akodia is with the savings and loans companies. Recently, they had their portion of the cleanup, and he was all over. Mr. Chinebua, question or contribution?
Thank you very much, George, and thank you for the good information shared here. I want to quickly say that my main concern has to do with the remaining institutions. How do we ensure that we support them to grow? And as a country, we should not be quick to kill institutions, but look at how do we continue to nurture businesses through different laws and regulations. And I want to support what Madam Mariam Bano said, that if we think that the laws we have are not enough, let us look at a better alternative. Because then I try sometimes to look at the Act 930, that's Section 123 says, when a bank or SDI is insolvent, shut it down. Is there any other alternative? No. And so if the regulator shut them down, are they right? Yes, per the law. But could there have been any other? And I want to add that a good father is somebody who is able to discipline the child at the right time and also commend the child at the right time. We should not wait for industry to come to us as regulators. Some of the regulators have started this, and I must commend those regulators who are doing that. They are proactive and engaging industry. We will want to encourage regulators that let us continue to engage industry. The players that we are supervising, let's go to them, ask them. It is said that the person who says I'm lost knows where he's hiding. What do I mean? The people who created the problem, they themselves, if we engage them right, we will be able to pick what made them do what they did. And the last one I want to say is that if the story on CBG is true, that they have become successful, and it was a good decision that was taken, and just borrowing the words from my own regulator who says to ensure financial stability and protect depositors' funds while reducing job losses, a P&A was used, a consolidated bank was created. Then what was the rationale for not doing same or similar for savings and loans companies, finance houses, and microfinance companies? Maybe it wasn't for financial stability or for job losses or for something. Maybe going forward, we industry will want to do more. And I must commend, especially Bank of Ghana. They've been very open these days to us, especially my association and the members. We want to continue to see more of that, and that we should not wait until problem come, but rather let us continue to engage.
I'll come to you, Mr. Segis. Let's do another round of quick comment. Mr. Larson, and then I'll come to Dr. Samensa, Dr. Sedo, and then I'll come to the stage, and then we'll go back for questions. And Mr. Larson, done, yeah.
just wanted to, I wanted to position this local and foreign bank conundrum. I think, as I said, for me, we have credibility crisis. The issue is that if you look at the systemic banks, a good number of them are domestic banks, they're local banks. I mean, well run. They take risk and they manage the risk. Let's move away from the fact that local means mediocre. Local means you can get away with things that are not industry standard. Let's move away from that. Whether it's in banking or anything that we do, we all attend the best courses. I'm sure if I say how many of you here attended Harvard, you'd see a lot of hands go up. So we've been to the best institutions in the world, and I said, one of the best institutions I've worked with was SSB. It was very, very well run, and there was not a single expatriate there. I mean, again, EcoBank, all of them, I ran Standard Bank. For the past, I don't know how many years, we have not had a single expatriate. Everybody is a Ghanaian. So it's about how we uphold our professional standards. You know, I've not known any job apart from banking. I feel very sad that this is happening. And then for any suggestions that local means mediocre, it really gets at me, and I think we should move away from that. You know, we tend to just condone misbehavior, and we should build institutions, whether they are local or international, on very sound principles and practices, and hold ourselves accountable to those standards that we institute to run these institutions. Yeah, I thought I should make that point.
Thank you so much. Mr. Sejesi wanted to respond to some of the questions raised quickly, and then I'll get back to the audience.
Yeah, thank you very much, my friend Chinua Kujua, and I think I agree with you that we need to support indigenous banks. And that is why I think the gas framework is there. And that should tell you that banks that are well run and have very good governance systems are receiving support through the GATT framework. On the issue of killing institutions, from where I sit, and I will continue to say, and I share the sentiments expressed by Mr. Andani, most of these institutions killed themselves. And I'm being frank with you. It is painful. I sit back and look at one of the banks, well-represented bank geographically across the country, with very huge asset base and competent staff, and you see this bank going down. Then I ask myself, what happened? If you have a situation where directors and key management staff debited deposit accounts and credited the income accounts and paid out dividends, where can you find this situation? If you have a situation where regulators tell you your fixed assets should not be more than 25% of your shareholders' funds or own funds, and you have billions invested in fixed assets, depositors want their money, and you tell them, I have a property here, go and take. I have lands here, I will use it to pay you. Where can you find these situations? And you come back to say that it is the regulator that is killing your business? How can you explain this, my brother? For most of the banks that have gone down and the savings and loans that have gone down, I can tell you that we engaged them over a long period of time because we wanted them to continue business. And we just don't wake up one day to revoke a license. Before we get to a stage where Section 123 says that the license shall be revoked, what it means is that we would have taken that bank through what we call the prompt corrective actions, where we would have said to the bank that don't pay dividends, don't pay bonus, don't collect more deposits. And we would have said this to the bank and would have asked the bank to submit capital restoration plans, would have monitored. So at a point in time, if we say that we are revoking the license of a bank, Mr. Chinua, it is not a child's play. I'm being frank with you. To say that give my license back to me, it is not a child's play. And it is not something that I would want to politicize. And it is not something that I will sit somewhere and somebody will tell me that this bank belongs to this person, this bank belongs to that person. So come out with the report in such a way that I'll be able to revoke the license. How? It's not a child's play. Most of these banks collapse on their own. Cosmetic accounting, related party transactions. You send the reports, the recommendations will not be implemented. You find that they come back to pay. As I speak to you, I have raised a penalty of about 10 million in the bank. Why? Because the bank has fallen foul of the law. And the bank would have to pay. So let's not think that somebody is sitting somewhere and is collapsing banks. As a professional, that is the last thing I would want to do. As a professional, the last thing I would want to do is to sit somewhere for somebody to influence me and say that bring a report so that on the basis of that report, I'll collapse a bank. When people are working and they have families to feed, when people have toiled to raise capital to invest in the bank, when people have their deposits there, when the Kayaye, the market woman, is sweating to place monies in these banks, and that is the kind of decision I want to take, it will never happen. I'm also a professional.
Thank you, Mr. Sejish. I'll be going to the audience very soon. Dr. Tuangene, thank you so much for the applause. Let's show some love and appreciation. I'll be getting to the audience very soon, but Mr. Tuangene, just a minute, quick comment, please.
Madam said that the role of the state. After any crisis, those of you who knows the financial crisis in 2008, 2009 in America, the state has a role to play. And when Mr. Kofi Mabin was saying, there is something fundamentally wrong with our regulation. Today, let me make it clear. You know, the Constitution's Section 183 set up Bank of Ghana. And the sad thing is that the appointment of the governor is tied to the ruling government. In other jurisdictions, I mean, let me use the English jurisdiction, or even South Africa. Mr. McCartney, who is a Canadian, after the financial crisis, the Bank of England could not get anybody. They brought him there. And his term always runs ahead. Even this Brexit there they are doing, they had to plead with him to stay to the end. He ran 7 years and ran another 7 years. Unfortunately, when your hands are tied by the Constitution making you like that, you become, I'm not saying you're a poodle, but you dance to the tune of the person. Let us always begin, as the lady, my former boss said, let us, the state, he was my boss at SSB, maybe he's forgotten me. A very troublesome person.
You're looking more handsome.
Yes. You see, I've done a lot of work on this regulation, and there's something fundamentally wrong. You know, you listen to SEC. SEC is not a constitutionally set up institution. You only go by law. But Bank of Ghana has its constitutional mandate. So he chooses to do certain things that they can do. He is sitting there by Act 2016-929, and he has the BSD 2016-930. But who is more powerful? The one with the constitution is powerful. So the role of the state, I think, way forward, the country, not only the politicians sitting in Parliament House, there must be a frank discussion about our regulation architecture. The English, after financial crisis, has left FSA and done something else. Dr. Semensa did a paper. Those of you who don't know, those of you who we read a lot and research a lot. In 2010, he was commissioned to do FinCEP, and he made a fantastic recommendation about regulatory architecture. It has died. Most of you don't know. I have a copy. So I think the state has a role to play so that we will begin as a nation, be very proactive in our regulation, rather than the way SEC is sitting down there. Now SEC for himself, he depends upon somebody to give him transactional fees before he can survive. I mean, Bank of Ghana has its own funding way of making the money because the asset base is big, the investment is big, so they can choose to do it. Let us now take this opportunity as a nation to seriously look at our regulatory architecture. And if the need be, the Kenyans are now doing it. The South African has done it. Australia has done it so many years. Netherlands has done it. They all come after crisis. And after crisis, it is not business as usual. So let the whole nation, including the politicians, I mean, when the crisis came, some of us were agitating that it should be for free for all to attend to make submission. No. It's a privileged position for the, is it called the legislature or what? It's a privileged position for them to interrogate the governor. I wanted to be there because I do research a lot in these things, and I was going to, they said, don't come there. I mean, it's not, they are not suppository of knowledge. Let me tell the whole country. Suppository of knowledge doesn't belong to one side. Let us be a frank discussion, as he has said, so that we can move this nation to avoid some of these things that has happened to this nation.
Thank you, Dr. Twang. Let me go to the audience. Elikem Konyenya, Chairman of NSA Africa, just to make a quick comment on that one. Let's open up for questions now. Let's take 4 sets of questions, and we come to the podium for them to react to it. Make it as brief as possible. We are going live on most of our networks. I want to make sure that everybody who has a question here gets an opportunity to do that as brief as possible. If you can mention your name and, yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Samson Asake. I won't go with, you decided to ask me to mention my name, even though you have signed a letter inviting me to this place. I am here in my capacity as the Executive Secretary of Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana. So where I've been sitting since morning and have not been acknowledged, I think I am an intruder, which means...
Don't worry, you can go ahead with your question. Thank you so much.
And I have respect for the multimedia group because you've invited me officially and the letter is here. And as a special guest...
Don't worry, you can go ahead with the question.
You know, I have to make this point clear so that next time it shouldn't happen in that direction. Because I have a constituent to protect. Because the bank crisis affected importers and exporters in this country. But what I want to appeal to the media is that sometimes when issues of this nature comes, not only your sector, but you have even done the kudos to bring, to assemble professionals to actually speak, not politicians, to discuss the issue for us who are sitting at the back as business people to understand the issues clearly. So I just want to encourage that other media houses should emulate the same thing by bringing professionals. It's not everything that the politicians know. As the big man said, Dr. Atuahene said that he wanted to come in as a professional, and they said no. That is what is happening in this country. That is my contribution.
Thank you so much. Still opening up for...
Thank you. My name is Pastor Joseph Donko, Executive Secretary for Ghana Association of Microfinance Companies. I think a lot has been said already, where we came from and where we are now. But I want to add my voice to many of us who are saying that the cleanup has ended. It's not. We from the microfinance subsector knows how even the receivership, the process and how it is going is affecting our members who are operating now. Because we work much with the informal sector. And I can tell you, a market woman will say that, "Midi misika ko to microfinance way, trade abanti mi fa misika enko ahabio." And so it's not ended yet. When Bank of Ghana started talking about cleanup, they invited the association, and we even said the word cleanup should be relooked at. And can we say sanitization? Because that one continues. Bank of Ghana kept the word cleanup. And cleanup suggests that there's some dirt somewhere and you are taking it off, and when after that, then it is clean. But I must say that the work that we are doing is continuing. We haven't finished. And I think what we have discussed here is the case. We still have a lot to do with what we are doing. One of the fundamental issues I want to talk about is the credit regime that we have and how it is affecting our institutions. We have a weak credit system, and we talked about high NPLs that Nana spoke about. If institutions will bring fresh capital and invest in their business, they give loans to people, and the people that they give loans to can sit in the comfort of their homes, and their offices and know that if I don't pay, there's a very difficult way of the institution coming back and force me to pay. If it goes to court, they will ask me, how much can I pay? And so on and so forth. And so I want us to relook at our credit regime, because it is making it disincentive for even people to bring additional capital. If you ask me, in the microfinance sector, now it's difficult to raise capital in the face of February 2020 deadline that is given to us. I don't know what the regulator is thinking, but my members, we just did a survey, and I can tell you about 90% of them, the information we receive from them is difficult to raise that money you are talking about.
All right, thank you so much. Let me do Tony Obeng, representative of the rural banks. We understand from the regulator that there will be a different strategy in dealing with your sector. You can go ahead with your question, please.
That's very fine. I'm glad that I'm not going to speak about mining, but I'm going to speak about banking now. Coming from the rural bank, you know, the profile of our people is different from the profile of those of us who create the problems. What they hear is what they go with. That is why I'm very comfortable with the statement made by the head of BSD that the cleanup is over, but the reform continues, because the people we represent, our clientele, our stakeholders, they listen to simple things and they act upon that. So once the cleanup is ongoing, it represents that some banks are going to be closed. Some banks are going to be put together. I know that in the past, through Apex, some reforms have been going on. I mean, we've been encouraged to sort of merge and then take over and all those things. That's ongoing. But I'm very comfortable with the fact that the cleanup is over, the reforms continues. Because the credibility crisis, no, not crisis, credibility concern is there at the rural banks. Now, my question, quick one, to my brother, Reverend. I know he's very reluctant to make any pronouncement over here, but most of the rural banks have a lot of placement with these investment houses. I was just wondering if you could assure us that eventually we are going to get back our resource which is placed there. Thank you.
Would it be a good time just to come back to you for those questions that were raised, quickly respond to them, and I'll get back to the audience. Please, I'll do that. So, yes, there were some questions that were raised with respect to the supervisor, or it could also be a good time to address the concern about liquidity and how these funds are being used and all the rest.
Thank you very much. For now, in the era of recapitalization, I think capital and liquidity is, in the era of recapitalization, capital and liquidities, these are not constraints. The banks are adequately capitalized, and there's liquidity in the system. But we acknowledge the fact that NPLs are still high, and even though we have moved from about 23% currently to about 18%, but 18% is not the best. We still would want to achieve single digits. And in a regime where you have high NPLs, certainly the banks would find it very difficult to give further credits. But we know that for some time now, the policy rate has been about around 16%, and it is expected that going forward, as the macro improves, rates will trend down and the banks will respond appropriately. So there's enough liquidity in the system, but you would have to meet the requirement of the banks to get credit. We know that there have been some challenges in this area, especially to private sector. But from where we sit looking at the balance sheet of the banks, we have seen that credit to the private sector is growing, but not at the rate that one would expect, given that deposits have gone up. These are some of the challenges that we have observed.
Reverend, They want some assurance from you, just an assurance.
Yeah,
a practicable assurance.
Tony, so we have been engaging the Ministry of Finance for our licensees to be given a different treatment, especially when it comes to the resolution process of the SDIs, because we are saying that they can't be treated the same way the regular depositors are treated. And I can confirm that the ministry understands and appreciates the fact that we need a slightly different, nuanced package or solution for our licensee. So sooner than later, without giving much details, there should be some kind of comfort, yes.
Let's do some questions quickly. I can see. Is it a question or a question? If it's a quick question, I'll grant you that. Just a quick one, and then we'll do 5 sets of questions, and I'll come to them through so that everybody can have an opportunity to make sure that his question is addressed.
My question is for Bank of Ghana. Why are they treating all the banks with one broom, as if they are all crooks, and they've run out the company, taking monies out of the companies to other loans? Why don't you look into each company and the causes? I've been attending Yoko, for example, because when your bank goes down and the taxpayer has to pay the bill, you must be investigated for misconduct. But unfortunately, in this country, if you have a good case and you go to court, you are in trouble. If you have a bad case, rush to court. So, Bank of Ghana, why are you not treating the whole issue case by case in respect of the banks? But it's like they condemn everybody.
Okay, right. Go ahead quickly. Yeah.
My senior, Mr. Amwabin, I respectfully would want to say that if you look at the press statements that accompanied the revocation of the licenses, I think Bank of Ghana was clear, even for the savings and loans and the finance houses. For each bank, we came out clearly to indicate what caused the collapse of each bank. And it would be wrong for somebody to say that a shareholder or a director is a criminal if the person has not been taken through due process. What we did was to just report the findings of the work that was done. And if you even read the boldest reports on some of these banks, I think the findings were clearly spelled out. I respectfully want to say that we are not saying that people are criminals. That is not what we are saying, because they have not been taken through due process. But we have just reported on our findings, and we're clear for each of the bank, the violations and the factors that led to the collapse of these banks were spelled out.
Let me get back to the audience. As brief as possible. Let me go to the back. I'll come back to Indum Jr. for just a quick question on that one. Let me do the gentleman in white at the bank. Brief, please.
Thank you. I'm Dan Saki. I'm a microcreditor and an accountant. I want to find out how, though it's not for you, but we have the National Identification Authority, who is supposed to make sure that everybody is duly registered and having a national ID card, which will also help us to build a very good credit regime. How far have we gone with this? Because for some time now, we've not heard anything. And in fact, the credit regime has been so badly damaged because of this whole cleanup exercise. And I would wish that Bank of Ghana will liaise with NIA to ensure that these things are expedited upon, so that it will also help the credit regime. Thank you.
When I heard the Dansaki, I thought it was the second EcoBank MD, but he's over there. Let me go to Dr. Nana Kweku Indum. Quick question, yeah.
Thank you very much. As Mr. Andani mentioned, there were some exposures in the energy sector. that were affecting the systemic banks, and something was put in place to correct it. And I'm sure if you look into the details, you'll see that there are some exposures in the contractor area of this industry that are affecting a number of financial institutions, some of which I would argue would not have collapsed if those debts were paid. So I'm wondering whether, and I don't know if this is a question that anyone on the panel can answer, but is there something in store similar to ESLA that could be put in place for the contractors? Because if that was done, or if it can be done, it will really improve the situation for many financial institutions. And then also, just a quick comment about the land and assets. In a number of cases, the reason why financial institutions have land and assets is because the people they placed the money with, they defaulted, they went to court, and they acquired those assets, and they're having trouble getting liquidity for it. I'll say that in our group, we have judgments, in the hundreds of millions in judgments that we can't execute, big parcels of land that we can't sell at auction. There's really a liquidity problem in the system, and being able to recover some of those funds, whether it's through court, whether it's through the receivers, some of us still have exposure at places like Beige that we're still struggling to get paid. If those problems can be solved, then some of these institutions can pay the people who need it the most and potentially get back to some situation of normality. I'd also like to echo that conversation about administration versus receivership should be had, because when a company is put into receivership and liquidated, you're automatically destroying value. So if you have a network of hundreds of branches, for example, if you put in a mechanism where someone comes in and tries to run that business, even if you're taking away from the shareholders, you should be able to recover more funds by maybe selling that business to somebody else. When you put in a receiver and the goal from the outset is to liquidate, you're automatically destroying value. And the receiver isn't really incentivized. They have a job to do. They're going to come in, close it down, sell those assets. There will be value lost. Market value versus for sale value. All those assets will be sold at for sale value. And what will happen, then the receiver will do their accounts and they'll say there's a gap of 200 million or 500 million. And what happens? They sue the shareholders. So they're protected. That's the backstop. But I think a decision needs to be, or a conversation needs to be had about in what instances do you decide for administration versus receivership, and maybe build it into the act so that there is, such as in England, there's some accountability for that decision of why are you shutting it down versus trying to preserve it. And that, I think, will protect the investor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nana Kweku Ndom is Vice President of Group Ndom. And I want you to note that question, because I'll come back to this whole argument about whether there can be a human face to supervision or one size. That's a concern, maybe, or one size fits all. Nana Sebon's a quick question, and then I'll get back to that.
My question, Kweku, what you talked about is going to be solved soon because of the Insolvency Act that is in Parliament that will allow the institution itself to apply for insolvency and protection of the law. So you don't have to worry about the regulator at that time. The question I have, Mr. Osejisi and Reverend, let me read a little bit of the preamble for the legal and regulatory framework of Bank of Ghana. That it shall have overall supervisory and regulatory authority in all matters relating to banking and non-banking financial services with a purpose to achieve a sound, efficient banking system in the interest of depositors. In the interest of depositors, and then it adds up. Then on the other side, it says depositors' funds are safe. My last question, in behalf of the domestic private sector, when do they get their funds? No sooner, no later, immediate. That's our request. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Nana Sebon. So this program is coming to you live from the Labadi Beach Hotel. It's a Joy Business Financial Services Forum. It's live on most of our platforms and also live on my Joy Online and also JoyNews as well. And very soon we'll be drawing the curtain down. So for those who have questions, I'll plead with you to be as brief as possible so we can get the regulators here to answer that. Let me go to Dr. Anyasedo.
Thank you very much. I was going to say a very light one. Madam Bano talked about auditors, and they talk about SSB, 3 of them. But the good news is that when SSB was doing well, the auditors were very strict. I was there. Now, on a more serious note, I think we're having this discussion in isolation. We should situate it in the economy. We should know the size of our economy and probably determine the level of efficiency we run in this whole economy. Because we give out money, people are not paying the monies back. Our level of efficiency is just bad. And I always say that interest rates, inflation, exchange rates are the measure of the level of efficiency. So till we start working on efficiency in our economy, we'll still have these challenges. And for my brother from the regulatory side, I have money somewhere, I can't get it. So it's still a problem. Now, how many banks should we have? It's a conversation we should have. I think banks and other financial institutions came when the big ones were not responding to us as customers well. When they started bluffing us, then it created gap for other people to come in. If the banks are efficient and doing well, I don't think we'll have too many of them. Now, the deposit that you are supposed to mobilize, it's not there, it's not cheap. With technology, the MOMOs, it's creating all kinds of problems. With the asset management entities, the mutual funds, they are creating problems for the banks in terms of mobilization. So we should have the conversation to limit the number of banks we should have. We've seen the situation where, because of the other influence, people walk in, submit applications, and they are approved. Till we work on that, we would have problems. The boardroom, for me, that is a conversation we must continue to have. Mrs. Banner talked about the boldness to discuss the issues. People go to board meetings without reading the board papers. They don't read. They go because of the sitting allowance. People go to boardroom without understanding the financial statement. She said it should not be everybody who should be a financial person, but you must have basic understanding. When I spoke about directors' report and their responsibility, look, there are a lot of directors who said, hey, we didn't know. And I asked, your own report you don't read, then what are you doing in the boardroom? Look, we have challenges, and we must admit that till we engage continuously to do what is right, we'll come again.
Thank you so much. Let me see whether I can get a quick response from you. I'll go to Madam Mariam Bano, and then I'll come back and move to the other side of the room as well for quick questions and contributions. Mr. Jesse, quick two questions from Dr. Ndum, and then Anao Bunsu, and then Dr. Sedo as well.
Yes, I think I'll do my best to give quick responses. Yeah, for the NIA cards, it is something that has, for the NIA cards, it is something that has come up. I want to believe that the banks have access to the database of the voters' ID, so it facilitates credit delivery and recoveries. But what has come to my attention, I still need to do a follow-up, is that the banks do not have access to the database of the NIA cards. So there's a challenge there. It has come to the attention of the regulator, and that issue is being addressed. Yeah. Then the second one is exposure to contractors. I think my good friend Ndum, raised this issue. I appreciate where he's coming from, that some of the institutions that have gone down have had exposures with some contractors, and that could have helped if they have been paid. I want to say that from where we sit, if an institution had exposures to contractors, and these contractors have executed government projects, in doing our analysis and computations, we factored this into it. That would have to be confirmed to us, the amounts, and the question is, if these loans are paid to the extent that the bank has directly financed these contractors and they've executed government jobs, if these loans are paid, what will be the liquidity and solvency position of this bank? Because it will be unfair for a final decision to be taken where a bank has legitimately financed government project and the government has confirmed. So I know where my friend is coming from, and I want to assure you that that analysis is always done. And I've had that conversation more than 30 times with my friend, and he will acknowledge this. And there's written communication to that effect. The next one is banks having a lot of assets because customers have defaulted and they've had to take over those assets. We are aware of this. I think the rules are clear. If you take over an asset of a customer that has defaulted, the accounting treatment is clear. You have 1 year to dispose of the assets. You cannot continue to load your balance sheet with fixed assets, because you load your balance sheet with fixed assets and you create liquidity problems for yourself. You need to dispose of those assets to get the needed cash inflows to be able to pay depositors. So long as you have not disposed of those assets, you continue to have challenges and you have problems with the regulator. That answers it. In connection with the receiver having to sell assets at book value, I think that was also raised by my for sale value. Yeah, that was raised by my good friend, Dr. You see, if you look at Act 930, the Act 930 is clear. I agree with what you are saying, but for us to be able to bring on board what you are saying, we need to take a second look at the Act. The necessary amendment would have to be done to the Act, and until that is done, we'll continue to face these challenges. Let me assure you that we are aware of some of the challenges that the Act poses, and we have compiled all these challenges, and the necessary amendments will be done to the Act at the appropriate time. I think I agree with Dr. Sedo, yeah, my senior Dr. Sedo, that we need to look at the economy. We are very much aware of some of the challenges that are associated with the economy. We, the regulators, we do our very best to ensure that the monetary is catered for, the appropriate decisions are taken. We'll continue to work with the fiscal authorities, because the fiscal authorities would have to collaborate with the monetary authorities to move this country forward, so that the financial sector will be able to respond appropriately. I think then the number of banks, I agree with you. The question is, what is the optimal size or level of banks that we should have? Already, I think the 400 million is a check, because those days when the 400 million Ghana cedis came out, it was about $80 million. And you need to raise $80 million before you get a license. And we have also come out clearly on people who are qualified to be on these boards, fit and proper. These are provisions that, in a way, restrict entry. That is not our intention. But for you to be able to meet all these requirements, then it's really a tall one. It's a tall order. And that alone is a way of ensuring that the number of banks that you have in the system is regulated.
But I'll come back to you very soon. But this is the Joy Business Financial Services Forum. We're coming to you live from the Labadi Beach Hotel. It's live on our JoyNews channel on Multi TV, and also on my Joy Online, as well as you look at financial services cleanup. What next? We're bringing you the views of those who are listening to us and watching us via the various social media platforms. I'll be trying to move to the next batch of audience that we have here. Let me go to Mr. Dansaki, he's MD of EcoBank, for any quick. I know your regulator is here, but don't worry. Chatham House rules, everything that happens will stay here. Don't worry.
I think just a quick follow-up on the comments made by the president of the Ghana Association of Bankers, and then also Dan Sedo. Contextualizing this in the economy, we've looked at the various challenges. He mentioned the issue of interest rates, exchange rates, and other things, and the impact on not just the banks, but also the clients that we have, individuals, corporates. Once you situate this, then you realize that we are not just dealing with the banks, but we also need to deal with the economy. Because even delay, even by the major player in the economy, which is government, in resolving some of the concentration issues we've talked about, energy sector was mentioned, BDCs were raised, even if the government finishes its part, the residual issues with the BDCs needs to be resolved. The final point I'd like to make is that if we don't sort out the judiciary to ensure that banks can realize the collateral when there is default, then we'll be back to square one. Our credit culture as a nation, as a people, is bad. People take loans and the expectation is that about 20% will not pay. Until we resolve this issue through an effective judiciary that is able to help banks collect, and in time, then we are not going to get anywhere. So let us pay some attention to that side of our business. The issue of identification has been touched upon by somebody who raised it. It is a key issue. Until people know that if I don't pay, I can be located and there will be sanctions, they will never pay. Most people who pay their debts today is voluntary, because if you don't pay, there is no way, there's no address system that can pin you down. There is no sanction in terms of inability to play a further part in the system. Because if I can still walk to another bank and be able to borrow, I don't have any incentive to really pay. If I am a borrower, not even an individual, but a corporate, and I can still do business despite the fact that I have unpaid liabilities, I have defaulted on my obligations with other institutions, then there's still no incentive for me to repay. And these are issues that we need to look at critically. Thank you.
Dansaki is MD of EcoBank. Let's go to another stretch and get some questions here. And we have some few minutes to draw the curtains down. I want to make sure that everyone's concerns or questions are captured on our various platforms. So promise me you'll be as brief as possible with your question. Philip, who do we have next with respect to your question? Yeah.
My name is Naaman Watete. So I said corporate governance thrives on personal governance. And personal governance is the cornerstone of good corporate governance. So I would ask that board of directors do some self-development, self-reflection, a continuous of self-development, and have ethical behavior. Thank you.
Yeah. Questions? Yeah.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. There has been a lot that has been said, and I would say that this...
Can you identify yourself, madam?
Oh, okay. My name is Harriet Donko from the Embassy of Switzerland here in Accra. I think a lot have been said. The discussions I have said has been around post hoc, ego propter hoc, and I think my beloved lawyers will understand that. After this, therefore, what? The question here is now what? I'm directing my question directly to the supervision from the Bank of Ghana. I'm sure there has been some plan before this whole exercise was taken. The Ghana Beyond Aid strategy has been rolled out. I share the concern of the private sector that the government is going to build on the private sector to develop the economy. Private sector businesses and assets are being logged in this. Now what? Thank you very much.
Interesting. Any question again before I come to Captain Budukunsin? Let me do Captain Budukunsin, I'll come to the back, and then I'll come to the seat for quick response here.
I have just questions in my head, plenty questions. I don't know whether we will have the answers here, but I would start with the observation that Mr. Andani made, that we should move away from when it's local, it's mediocre, and if it's foreign, it's better. We can do better than we are doing. That one I would support because it hurts. After you've worked outside, you come here and we sort of accept mediocre standards and say we are local, and then we beg for support and these things. We can up our game. But Mr. Andani also made a point that the systemic banks, it's not a banking crisis because they control about 90% of the deposits, right? If I heard you right. Okay. But what is the effect? The systemic banks are not lending to the mass of the people in economic activity. You realize that those institutions that are affected are those that are actually catering to the mass of the people. Ghana is an economy based on SMEs and the informal sector. And I would tell you the SMEs and the informal sector is about 90% of the economic activity in Ghana. Those people going up and down, the small traders and these things. So that we have a situation where those with the 90% or the big chunk of the assets not catering to
the majority of the business sector, and I would want Bank of Ghana to have a critical look at this and see how best we can support those who are catering to this sector of the economy. Because if that sector fails, you can give whatever you want to the formal sector, Ghana will not get out of its situation. We will not improve. Because if we improve the SME sector, we are touching about 80% or 90% of the people in economic activity. That said, just to make things short, I would say that I don't think Ghana, we are short of technical knowledge. I don't think so. What we are deficient in is character. Character. And that is what is killing us. How do we translate our knowledge and our certificates and everything to the activities that we do on the ground? My experience in corporate Ghana with management is that most often the qualifications are there, but it boils down to the character of the people implementing these regulations and processes and procedures. It's heartbreaking to hear very, very prominent names you respect, and you see them on boards, and they are acquiescing and have shrunk. And then you wonder, is this the guy I heard about? And why is he not talking up or standing up or even resigning out of, what do you call it, your technical competence? That I'm not going to take this. But it's character. We don't stand up and we don't resign on principle. We don't do all sorts of things. And, well, like I said, I'll keep it short. And there's also another phenomenon I've seen where you have owner-operators and boards and those relationships. I think the regulators would want to have a good look at that angle also. Thank you.
Thank you so much. 1,001 question, but all wrapped up in one question. Right. Let me go to the back, the gentleman in suit.
My name is Peter Sangwedere, Vice President of the Chartered Institute of Bankers. A lot has been said. The central bank, the regulator, has acted. We have a situation on our hands now where some banks are off, and it has an impact on the customers. In Ghana, of course, and like any other place, the financial sector, the banking sector, is networked. When you touch one, it is the whole system that is touched. And there is that high level of sensitivity when it comes to the customers. Even when they are not banking with a particular institution and they see that that particular institution is touched in one way, it has an impact on them. They may decide not to go to do any business with any bank anymore. Where we are now, and I like the way the team has been couched, financial services sector cleanup. Now what? Surely, what next? I believe that we need now to concentrate some effort on rebuilding that confidence in the system. I do not know what measures the various parties would have, but I think one of the things we need to do is to ensure that monies that are locked up, as has been said by some people, are actually made available to the customers. And maybe Bank of Ghana may need to lead the way, but all of us will have a role to play to ensure that we let the public realize that, yes, the cleanup is over, as Bank of Ghana has said, but we now need that people should begin to save again with the banks, to do business with the banks, and get that confidence back. If that is not done, clearly, no matter how good the systems are, if the people fail to bring the deposits, and I must say the individual depositors have a chunk of the monies, if they fail to bring the deposits, we certainly will not be able to move forward in getting the banking industry going forward.
Thank you so much. One last question, and I come to the stage. Yeah.
Hello. My name is Doris Ahiati. I'm a chartered banker and also CEO of Crescendo Consult. I've listened very intensely to the discussions around the room, and one that I would like to comment on is how we have conducted the business of banking in the midst of all the challenges that we've had. I think it's evident that there's been quite some abuses as far as the understanding of how banking operations should be conducted vis-a-vis how we have actually conducted them in the country, leading to the situation that we find ourselves. I think in the circles of banking profession, we do say that a bank is not in the business of selling real assets. And so if in the process of dispensing credit, you don't do your credit analysis to the extent that you find yourself in a default situation and you are burdened with real assets, then indeed you're going to have to deal with greater challenges further down the line. And so the understanding, I hope that the framework that has been given for issuing further licenses in future will ensure that the understanding of the business of banking is actual, so we don't find ourselves where we have been. But my real question for today is to the governor of the head of supervision at Bank of Ghana, and then also to maybe Reverend Ogbami Tete, who is the Director General for the SEC, that what is the role of staff, the professionals that find themselves serving in both the banking industry and then the investment banking sector in the future? What will be the role of the banking professionals to ensure that we don't find ourselves where we are again? For example, banking professionals tend to say that we were aware long ago of these developments that were not right, that we knew was going to eventually bring the industry crashing. But what power and what confidence did banking professionals have, and who was supposed to be the go-to person if we wanted to speak up? And so that's the question that I want to throw to the regulators. We've sort of tackled all the other stakeholders, leaving out to a large extent the professionals who work in these industries. What will be their role going forward to ensure that they help protect the sanity of the industry? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Anyati. Let me go to Dr. Nasedo. If we can have you in just a minute with your question, and I'll come to the podium to react to the questions. Yeah, quickly, please.
Dr. Sam Mensah will be here, but he's left. I was going to speak about the regulatory architecture. Dr. Triahini mentioned it slightly. We have about 4 silos. That is the SEC, pensions, Bank of Ghana, and insurance. And you don't see the coordination, and there's a challenge with resources to these institutions. Reverend talked about the conglomerates, and there are blur areas and there are gaps. So it's easy for operators to move and swerve the regulators. I'm aware, not just that I'm aware, I'm part of a team that did some work with Dr. Mensah about what the regulatory architecture should be going forward. We're not hearing anything about it. It's important that we look at our regulatory architecture. The way it is currently and the number of institutions with license is just impossible for them to regulate, whether you are using the risk base or whatever. So let's go and look at the architecture again.
Thank you. Let me go to the lady in white at the back, and then I'll come to, yeah.
I was very excited when we made a call.
Can you take the mic closer to your mouth so we can
I was very excited when we made a call and we're told that we could come for the program. There was space for us to come. But my expectations have not been truly met. This because I think we've all focused on the root causes instead of looking at the next phase, which is now what. I expected that there would be best practices being shared with us, and also the way forward as to the structure of the banking in terms of credit monitoring, because the MPLs are basically created because of the credit issues and the monitoring issues that we have in the bank. So I'm not too excited that we did not appropriate the time well, such that we could focus on the now what, because that's where the focus should be. The banking, the financial sector, I won't say that the crisis is all over. but the reforms, the steps to take, what do we do best so that we avoid such a crisis again? And that question has not been answered here.
I think that some of our panelists here have answered those critical questions, as in what next and what is being done in the line of regulation going forward.
I expected something more practical, such that, okay, off-site monitoring, this is what we are doing. On-site, this is what we are doing. Because these things have been done, off-site, on-site. But no, I don't think that we got here because it wasn't properly done. So I expected to see a scenario, Mr. Jesse, to tell us, this is what we will do. Bank A, Bank B. It hasn't been done.
Okay. Let me come to the Madam Mara, yeah. Yeah. Hello?
One of the initiatives I was going to talk about has been gladly brought up by the New Companies Act, which has enhanced the role of the company secretary. And I think it is important that we look at that role. Today, corporate governance is looking at the company secretary as the governance professional in the boardroom. Before the auditor comes, before the regulator comes, who is there in the boardroom giving guidance to the board and to the chairman? So we should look at that, because the company secretary now is the person who has to be trained to provide guidance, possibly even sitting by the chairman, making sure, asking questions about, has the conflict of interest register been signed? Do we have orientation for the board? Is the board complying? Is there continuous development for directors? Do we have a proper board evaluation and not box ticking? Because that is when the decisions are made, not after the effect. So it is very important that we handle. I am a lawyer. Well, I was taught company law in school, law school, but I wasn't taught to be a governance professional. And we should not make the mistake that because you're a lawyer, you'll be a good governance professional. Indeed, I am making a case for the chartered secretaries, that role to be enhanced. Because I'm saying that chartered secretaries are trained to be good company secretaries. But most of the time, we want lawyers in the boardroom. Yes, lawyers are good because of company law. But let us build the capacity of company secretaries in the boardroom. So when the decisions are taken, they are there guiding the directors, telling them that, no, you are not complying the law, you have to do the right thing. And I think it's one of the initiatives that we should put in place.
Let me come to Dr. Sejesi and answering quickly the questions that were raised by the audience, and then we move to Reverend Obama. Your mic is over there. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let me quickly speak to the issue raised by my friend, the lady, what practical issues, what are being done, what we are doing to ensure that we don't find ourselves in this situation again. And I want to believe that she's been following the developments, the directives we have issued so far. And at this stage, I wish my friends, the MDs and the key management staff of the banks who are here will speak to what we are going through with them. And because if you look at, for instance, the corporate governance directive, and you look at the fit and proper, you look at the cyber security framework that we have issued, you look at the financial holding, you look at the voluntary winding up and all those things. What is left is enforcement. A lot has been done. And if you need to talk to the MDs of the various banks for them to tell you the changes that have taken place and what they are going through with the current wind that is blowing, for you to appreciate that a lot is being done. And as far as those of us in the supervision department is concerned, if you look at the kind of supervisory framework that we have put in place, very robust. Talk to the external auditors and they will tell you about the kind of engagements that we've been having with them. It's really not been easy. And I have also told you about what my staff, what members of staff in the department is going through. It's like they've signed a performance contract, and myself. A lot is being done. And going forward, we're going to ensure that we enforce the rules, yes. Money's locked up in the private sector. I appreciate and share in the sentiments that people have made. When CBG was formed, I remember we had to go through a similar situation. Somewhere along the line, the funds that were made available to CBG, they were able to pay the savings and loans, their deposits, the finance houses, the rural banks, and to a large extent, even some of the banks that had their balances with those banks that had their licenses revoked, the interbank borrowings. A large extent, arrangements have been made and some have been paid. In connection with the savings and loans, microfinance, and the finance houses, I know what depositors are going through, trying to assess their funds. The process has been very slow, and we have discussed this with the receiver. And this week, it is expected that the receiver will expedite action on the payment of depositors' funds. There was a little challenge with CBG. We have invited CBG, and we have discussed the need for them to, as a paying bank, the need for them to collaborate their efforts with the receiver. And we have also indicated to the receiver the need for them to put appropriate structures in place to facilitate the payment. And I believe that this week, next week, we should witness a flow of resources from the receiver to depositors. In connection with loans to private sector, I agree that it is not happening the way it is expected. My superiors are engaging the banks. I'm sure, I don't know whether some of the MDs have been called, but as I sit here, I expect some meetings to be going on because we need to engage the banks. I know sometimes where the banks stand and where we stand, we have different objectives because they will be looking at the bottom line, but we need to talk, we need to engage them for them also to look at areas where they can deploy resources by way of loans and overdrafts, because the private sector is the engine of growth. I agree that maybe they are not doing too well in the area of, or in the areas of SME lending and retail lending. This is one area that we have to talk to them. But they also find themselves in a situation where they are carrying high NPLs. And just as you are aware, the cost of the bad products will have to be borne by the good products. So if you have NPLs high, it means once you are granting the loans, the good ones would have to pay for the bad ones, and it is a constraint to them. Yeah. So role of banking professionals. I'm very much in touch with the Institute of Chartered Bankers. I know they now have the presidential charter, and it has serious implications for them because you have to live up to the ethics of the profession. And we expect them to play a very active role as far as credit delivery and their provision of banking services are concerned.
So, CJC, can I give you a minute to also wrap up as your final words as we move to the other person?
What I have to say finally is that it's been a very bumpy road. It's been a very difficult situation. Decisions have been taken, tough decisions have been taken, painful decisions have been taken. We have come very far. And going forward, all the stakeholders, I think we have to play our parts. The external auditors, the banks themselves, board members, key management staff, regulators, we have to enforce the rules. And I think my friends, the MDs, will not come to me and say that, Charlie, this penalty is too high. Otherwise, we'll come here and my people will hold me accountable. I know they've been doing a very good job, and they have been very supportive. let me say, the Association of Bankers, they have made valuable contributions in the issuance of directives and even policy formulation. And going forward, I expect that with the experience and where they say they will continue to support us. Let everybody play his or her role, and I think we'll move the industry forward. Yeah.
Dr. Tuaini, to you, your final thought. There's still some concern that people are not convinced that now what next? Everything will be safe going forward. I mean, in a minute or 2 minutes, your final thoughts.
I think, having said by the regulator and the directives they've issued, I still say that if they should still enforce it and ensure total compliance, we are heading for a good road.
Okay.
But if they should not, it means we have it again. But finally, you know, I want to ask Mr. Osejesi, the law that set Bank of Ghana, whether it's the old law or the new law, it seems you people are biting too much. The reason why I say that, the Deposit Insurance Protection Act 931 2016, as was amended recently last year, you carrying this and adding it and then doing what we call the pay box deposit insurance. Look, I want them to look at it back again. Okay. And look at the risk maximizer, where in Nigeria, the Nigerian insurance do their own review, resolution, liquidation options. They do it. Bank of Ghana seems to be cut. You're doing monetary policy. You're doing supervision. You're doing payment and settlement. You're doing cyber. You're doing so many things. At the end of it all, do you even have the capacity to do? Make the depositor operationally independent and let the law be amended so that we adopt the American system or the South African system or the Nigerian system, where we have one deposit insurance scheme which will look at the interest of customers when the banks go into liquidation.
Thank you. Reverend Daniel Gwami-Tete, your final thoughts.
Yes, so some of the things that we are doing, we have taken another look at the licensing requirements because we need to raise the entry barriers to reduce the number of people playing in the space. We've come up with some guidelines, for instance, on related party transactions, which we have seen as one of the challenges. So it's all, again, about enforcement. We have also put a framework in place to create an investor protection fund in case, you know, some of the investors, depending on the situation, need to be cushioned a bit. We have also looked at the education of market operators, and we have revised the structure. We are placing a lot of emphasis on ethics. I know you can teach ethics, but you can't, you know, force people to go by. But at least we know that some people don't know that some of their actions may be unethical. So once you provide the knowledge, then you can, you know, hold them accountable on some front. So we are looking at that. We are also looking at and deepening investor education, because some of the stories we hear from my side, where someone will take all his retirement package and just take it to one place, you know, it's clearly traceable to lack of appreciation of the dynamics and investment. But I'm confident that we can make our financial sector work as all the players play their role. On a continuing basis, we improve, because there's always room for improvement.
Madam Bano, your final thought, please.
Thank you. I'd like to say that capacity building inside the boardroom should continue, and the cleanup exercise should also continue with the restoration of trust and confidence in the financial sector. But then, you know, when we talk about corporate governance frowns on the concentration of power in an organization. But the governor of the Bank of Ghana, who is the chief executive, is also chairman of the board of the Bank of Ghana. So when we are talking about reforms, how come the governor, who is the chief executive, is the chairman of the board? And then finally, there's something I wrote here. I'm not too sure if I can pronounce it well, but it says, "Quis custodiet ipsos custodes." What does that mean? This question was asked by a Roman poet many, many years ago. And today I'm still asking the question, who regulates the regulator?
I'm giving
Thank
you
you
a minute because just 1 minute because our time is up, Dr. James.
Yeah, I appreciate the sentiments expressed by my senior Dr. Tuahene on the deposit insurance scheme. And let me tell you that this September, the scheme has been brought on board. And it is the Ghana Deposit Insurance Protection Scheme Corporation, yeah. And it is independent of the central bank.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, all too soon we have to draw the curtain down for the program. I hope that we've actually been able to open the door for more debate on this issue as in what next with respect to this whole cleanup. My name is George Jaffe. I moderated this session with these distinguished personalities. Over to you, Philip, to wrap up.
Ghana Web, EIB, Journalists for Business Advocacy, Macula Traders Union, and most importantly, Labadi Beach Hotel. As George said, we've come to the end of this discussion, and all our invited guests also. I'll just go through them quickly. Mr. Dansaki, MD, EcoBank, Mr. Larsen Andani, MD, Stanbic Bank, Dr. Nana Kweku Indum, Vice President, Group Indum, Dr. Daniel Sedo, Financial Consultant, Mr. Kwame Jantua, CEO, Africa Energy Consortium, Dr. Tony Aubin, he was representing the Association of Rural Banks, Nana Osei Bonsu, Private Enterprise Federation CEO, Mr. Kofi Amabing, President, UT Holdings, Captain Retired Budukum Sin, CEO, Nexus Consulting, Elikem Kunyanya, Chairman, ENS Africa, Mr. Trinidad Kodia Boache, Ghana Association of Savings and Loans Companies, Executive Secretary, and Mrs. Doris Ayati, CEO, Crescendo Consult. I want to say a big thank you for joining us. It's sad we have to part ways, but I hope we've learned something. And we have some of the regulators here. We have Reverend here. Meet him outside. Put some papers in his pocket, and so that we can have the compliance, the knowledge building, and etc. in this. Thank you very much for joining us here at the 3rd edition of the Joy Business Financial Services Forum, coming to you from Labadi Beach Hotel, Omani Hall. Thank you.